The Great Gatsby, Lord of the Rings. Not much can be said in terms of how these two stories intersect. One is the fantasy tale of a group of unlikely adventurers, making their way to a volcano to throw a ring into a fire. And the other is a story about a guy named Nick, and his experiences with another more mysterious man named Gatsby, who hosted parties in the 1920s. On the surface, these two stories seem about as different as they could be. And I think that's why we've chosen to compare them. Because despite literally choosing them randomly, when you look past the surface into the underlying writing of these amazing stories, you're actually able to find a thematic connection, that of self-destruction, or perhaps the cycle of self-destruction amongst those seeking power. It is within human nature to desire, and The Great Gatsby does an excellent job at exemplifying this point. When you take a look at what happens within The Great Gatsby, much of, or all of it, is fueled by desire. A desire for wealth, love, desire to achieve one's dreams. These desires, however, all lead to the same thing, one's own downfall. For you see, The Great Gatsby tells a tale of many things, but none so potent as the very human cycle of hope and desire leading to destruction and death. And practically no one proves this paradigm more than our titular character, Jay Gatsby. Practically everything about this character screams desire. He's the novel's humanoid symbol of hope, constantly looking out to a light in the distance, symbolizing his dream of love. The thing is, he hung on to that dream too tightly. We first see evidence of this on page 93, after Gatsby had just shown Daisy the light, which symbolized his longing for her. Daisy put her arm around his abruptly, but he seemed absorbed in what he had said. Possibly it had occurred to him that the colossal significance of that light has vanished forever. Despite mentioning his realization of what he's lost, he continues to stare toward the light, showing Gatsby's reluctance to let go of hope. Powerful symbols hold precedence over our lives, and when we put so much time and meaning into them, it becomes hard to let go. Ultimately, and a big spoiler, in trying to hold on too tightly to his love of Daisy, Gatsby himself ends up dying. But that's just one specific example of a dream of love. Another character with a dream was Myrtle Wilson. She dreamed of leaving the Valley of Ashes, an area between New York and the West Egg. And in a very thematic fashion, she was killed trying to leave, by Gatsby and Daisy foolishly making a mess of their own dream, whilst completely destroying someone else's. The novel really has a bad habit of killing off its characters when they've outlived their dreams. The book pretty much spells it out for us. On page 162, at a time toward the end of the novel, nearing Gatsby's death, we get the quote, "If that was true, he must have felt that he had lost the old warm world. He had a high price for living too long with a single dream." It's a truly sad and clever window into the depressing reality of our world, and of hope. However, not every character with a dream actually died. Amongst the various themes of hope, one that seems universal in a way is the hope of money.
For you see, even our main character, Nick Carraway, came to New York in the hope of becoming wealthier through the bond business. Despite getting a loan to work on his craft over the year, he's still holding on to the dream of wealth, trying his best to succeed in a world of others far above him. But unlike the other characters with old or inherited money, Nick had a slight head start using the loan his father gave him. On the other hand, Gatsby had to start from very rough beginnings. On the whole, Gatsby got his wealth but kept going. Although the thing is, Nick didn't truly follow his dream. You see, Nick, throughout the story, is constantly just going with the flow. When the book first started, Nick stated that his reason for going into bonds was that everyone he knew was in the bonds business, so he supposed it could support one more single man. Nick followed the same dreams others had in order to fulfill his own true dream, that of writing. And in following this dream, he wasn't destroyed. He found a roundabout way to get there. If he solely focused on writing, however, all the other struggles of money and life would have probably caught up to him and destroyed him. In fact, he's tempted throughout the book to follow a path of destruction, but he avoids it. An example is the business opportunity that Gatsby offered to Nick. Luckily, Nick was suspicious and didn't agree. But if he did, perhaps he would have been led down that same path that Gatsby took. Now that was just our brief summary of hope in The Great Gatsby, but the story is truly littered with symbolism of hope, along with other devices as well. It's like a thematic grenade of a story. But now, getting past this introduction and into our purposeful connection, I would like to remind you of the Lord of the Rings. You see, Lord of the Rings has its own really good symbol of hope as well. And if you haven't pieced it together already, I'll just tell you what it is. The One Ring. let me give you a very brief plot summary. Lord of the Rings is a story about this ring. It was forged by the Dark Lord Sauron upon Mount Doom. The ring is very powerful. It makes the wearer invisible as well as ageless, but it also grabs a tight hold on the mind of whomever wears it. Long story short, the ring was too powerful, and in order to stop Sauron from destroying Middle-earth, our main characters needed to throw it back into Mount Doom, destroying it in the same place from whence it was made. Now, to the bulk of our connection.
It is within human nature to desire, and Lord of the Rings does an excellent job at exemplifying this point. When you take a look at what happens within Lord of the Rings, much of, or all of it, is fueled by desire. The desire for familiarity, power, the desire to become a god king. These desires, however, all lead to the same thing, one's own downfall. For you see, Lord of the Rings tells a tale of many things, but none so potent as the very human cycle of greed and desire leading to destruction and death. And practically no one proves this paradigm more than the tragic character called Smeagol, perhaps known better by the nickname Gollum. You see, Gollum was the third known person to possess the One Ring. After Sauron was initially defeated, the ring fell into the hands of a human named Isildur, who, in an act of greed, decided to keep the ring. But he soon died and the ring was lost at the bottom of a water bank. Later on, a friend of Smeagol's fell into the water where he found it and gave the ring to Smeagol as a cheap birthday present. Possessing the ring for centuries, it took over Gollum, becoming like a drug to him. He was a broken character, constantly in desire of what he called my precious. Much like with Gatsby, Gollum's symbol of desire became an obsession, which inevitably led to his destruction. But for Gollum, that wasn't the end. After accidentally dropping the ring, it was found by a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, who kept the ring on him for 60 years. And despite using it minimally, he still inevitably ended up showing signs of Gollumhood, having a hard time letting go of it, as well as referring to it in the same way as Gollum, as my precious. The scene in which he says this is honestly a grave omen of the ring's power, as well as a moment of realization for the viewer. This ring can, and will continue to ruin people's lives. It provides a cycle of constant greed and desire which will inevitably destroy anyone who possesses it. Following Bilbo's reluctant relinquishment of the ring, he left it in the hands of his old friend and wizard Gandalf the Grey, who then proceeds to pass on to Bilbo's nephew, actually cousin, Frodo. Denying the ring, Frodo attempts to give it back to Gandalf, who rejects it without grace, yelling at Frodo not to tempt him. You see, the story portrays the different races in different ways. Humans are greedy, hobbits are innocent, elves are snobbish yet wise, and so on. And through this, it tells different stories about the nature of people, particularly about the greed of humans. But when it comes to Gandalf, who isn't a human, he was wise enough not to even give the ring a chance to tempt him. And unlike the human Isildur, who was instantly overcome by the greed through the ring, as a hobbit, Frodo's neutral innocence was the perfect choice for the person to destroy it. For if it were to corrupt him, it would bring out his demons far slower compared to another race, who would be more easily destroyed by it. However, this is just my interpretation, but I think it's a pretty easy one to make without much doubt. And in the end, Frodo accepted Gandalf's quest. Skipping over many things, they managed to collect a group of others and work their way to Mount Doom. And of course, during trying times, Frodo is forced to use the ring. And throughout the story, it slowly corrupts him, and we get to once again see the cycle of Gollum repeating firsthand. Ultimately, and a big spoiler, when they make it to Mount Doom, Frogger is unable to throw the ring to the flames, corrupted by its power. But Gollum, who would join them, constantly in search of his precious, his desire, ended up biting off Frodo's finger, along with the ring, finally achieving his wish, but also plummeting into the fire right after. Led by his constant desire, Gollum paid a high price for living too long with a single dream, reaching his desire but the cost of utter self-destruction.
Both of these incredible stories, which, to mention again, we chose randomly, show how greed, dreams, and desire can lead to a path of demise. But through this, they also tell a tale of human nature. People are flawed right down to our base instincts. We're greedy, arrogant, and selfish, we're narrow-minded and more, and we're all flawed right down to our core. But neither story fully spells this out as a bad thing. They simply include it as a part of their world building. Sure, the elves bring up how terribly greedy humans are, but that notice is too a fragment of the flaws of the elves. They're arrogant, and at times racist. Because what good stories like these do is they don't tell us what is right or wrong. What they do is they provide us with a world to observe and analyze, one which we can relate to, one which we can enjoy, and one which can make us feel. Because a truly great story is one which we can learn from, but at our leisure. It doesn't treat you like an idiot, but lets you view it as a mirror, one of entertainment and self-discovery. A truly incredible tale is one that doesn't just act as escapist fiction or a way to pass time, but it does something truly special. It offers us a window into reality.